Listen, I need some advice. Has anyone ever said that to you? Now, if they have, you should take that as a compliment. They thought you had something worth saying. But now let's turn that around. Have you ever said that to someone else? I need some advice. According to King Solomon, people who are wise will seek out advice. The way of fools seems right to them, but the wise will listen to advice. King Solomon was part of an ancient culture in which kings would surround themselves with royal counselors. The counselors were there to advise them when they made major decisions, like, for example, new laws and legislation, or increasing or decreasing taxes, or whether or not to go to war. It was an honorable position to be a court counselor. There were a lot of great rewards. Now, at the same time, it was a risky position because if your advice turned out to be wrong, for example, if the king lost a battle, oh, that could be dangerous. And if the king just simply didn't like what you said, he could turn against you very quickly. Off with his head, a king might say. Now, you know, the book of Daniel shows the story of Daniel, who was a court counselor, plus a whole host of other counselors. And it shows their ups and their downs. When he's riding high and when he's sitting in a prison somewhere. That was the life of a court counselor. Now, kings also attracted unsolicited advisors. There were prophets who were sent by God to give counsel to the kings. So, for example, Elijah was sent to King Ahab, and John the Baptist sent to King Herod. So Solomon reflects upon this phenomenon of the court counselor, and he borrows that imagery to speak to us and to advise us that as we sit as king and queen of our own life choices, we ultimately decide what we will or will not do. Solomon says a wise king, a wise queen will surround themselves with good counselors. Wisdom is to be found in those who take advice. Using this imagery of the court counselor, Solomon says to us, now, don't go to war until you have first sought out counsel, because plans are established by seeking advice. So before you wage war, obtain guidance. Now, I don't know that you and I are in the war business, but you get the idea. A major decision needs to be made. Don't do it until you first talk to your counselors. Solomon says that plans will fail because of a lack of counsel, but with many advisors, they can succeed. Now, there are some real benefits to taking the time to talk to others before you make a decision. For one thing, it can sharpen your thinking. Solomon says that as iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another. Now, how does this work? Well, for example, I'm getting ready to decide something. I know what I think, but I want to see what you think. I want you to help me think through this. Now, the possibility there is that you may give me ideas I didn't think about. That's helpful. Maybe the person you're talking to can provide information that you're lacking. You know you're lacking. That's why you're asking. Maybe they've got an expertise you don't quite have. I don't want you to tell me from your experience what you think. Sometimes when you seek out counsel, it can challenge your own ideas. It puts you in the position of having to defend the idea you have, that it is in fact a good idea, or abandoning it, moving to a different idea because, as your counselor has suggested, it was a bad idea. And sometimes when we're talking to someone else and we're getting their counsel, it serves the purpose of just simply reinforcing that I already had a good idea. I was on the right track, and now I feel better about my decision. You see, iron sharpens iron, and people talking to other people and working through questions helps us to be sharper in our decisions, to be wise. Also, seeking out counsel gives us the opportunity for someone to draw deep thoughts out of our heart. Solomon says that the purposes of a person's heart are deep waters, but the one who has insight will draw them out. Now, the idea there is that if someone is a skillful advisor or counselor, they can coax you into looking deep within and finding what's there that you haven't actually mentioned yet. Maybe it's your true feelings versus the front that you put on the outside. Or sometimes they'll push you to dig down to find what is it you really want to know instead of the surface question that you actually asked. We're like that sometimes. We put a question out there, but it's not really what we're after. It's just what we said. And a good counselor, a good advisor, forces you to dig in deep and find out what's really going on inside. Now, what you want are good counselors. You don't want someone that gives you flaky ideas. You don't want a fool advising you. You want good counsel. So what are you looking for? My advice? You're looking for someone who is knowledgeable and experienced on the matter that you're asking about. Secondly, you want someone who's got a good track record in this very area, that they've got success. Now, they can also have failures, but the failures need to be followed up by they learned from their mistakes, they corrected it, and from then on it got better. You're looking for people with a good track record in the very matter that you're asking about. You also want someone who can be objective, someone who can step back, and they're not just going to repeat what you want to hear. They're not saying it because they're family and friend, but they're looking at it objectively and telling you honestly what you ought to hear. You want someone objective and honest. And in many matters, I want someone with a godly perspective. Now, if we're talking about how to fix my car or go buy a new one, which is the best route to go, it doesn't matter so much whether or not they got a Christian perspective. I need somebody who understands cars and finances. But there are some decisions in life, especially if they have a moral element to them, or they have something to do with my service for the Lord. I'm looking for somebody who understands where I'm coming from, someone who understands my perspective on life as influenced by our Lord. Now, that's the kind of things you're looking for, some good, solid counsel. But I have to tell you this, good counsel is no good at all if you don't do some good listening. And that's why Solomon speaks to us and says, you need to find good counselors and advisors to surround you and help you when you're making decisions, but you got to learn how to welcome it. You've got to welcome, rebuke, and challenge. That is, the counselor may not say what you want them to say. They may say something else. You need to welcome that. Now, naturally, we are defensive. Here's my brilliant idea. Now, what do you think? And when you don't like it, my first reaction is to say, wait, why not? I said in the beginning, give it to me straight. Now I'm saying, hey, I don't want to hear what you got to say. Something changed there. And the change was I didn't quite have the right attitude for seeking your counsel. See, a wise person asks for counsel and intends to listen to it, no matter what the counselor says. Whoever loves discipline loves knowledge, but whoever hates to be corrected, well, that person is a fool. Or as some translations say, that was a stupid thing to do. When critical advice comes our way, someone says to us different from what we wanted to hear, it may sting a little, but it's well worth hearing. I recommend that when you're getting counsel, you need to reflect rather than deflect. Now, think about that for a moment. Reflect rather than deflect. A wise person will listen, but fools will chatter. Solomon says, the wise in heart will accept the commands of others, but a chattering fool will come to ruin. Now, what's he mean by a chattering fool? Well, here I am, I'm listening to advice, but it's contrary to the way I was thinking. You know what I'm inclined to do? Explain to you why I'm thinking the way I am. You must have missed something in your counsel. I want to rationalize what I'm thinking. Or maybe you push back. Maybe you just reject it. Maybe you say, mind your own business. Now, I asked you for advice. I should be willing to listen, and even when it's different, to think about what you just said. Keep my mouth shut and start thinking. You see, good advice is often deflected away by the chatter that comes out in response to advice that was different from what I wanted to hear. The wise will reflect. They'll take the time to think about what was said, to see if there's some merit to what was said. They'll reflect rather than defect. I also would advise you this. You want to listen to advice and listen to rebuke, and if necessary, make appropriate corrections. Fools are slow to learn from their mistakes. As Solomon says, a dog will return to its vomit, and fools will repeat their folly. That's a rather disgusting proverb, but you get the idea. A foolish person, the person who never learns from their mistakes, they just keep repeating it. But those who are wise, they know better. Now, keep this in mind, wise people aren't perfect. They will make mistakes, but they learn from their mistakes. They don't keep on making the same mistakes. My advice is this. You want to seek good counsel and then listen when that good counsel comes. It is foolish to think that you couldn't benefit from someone else's advice. As Solomon says in Proverbs 19, verse 20, listen to advice and accept discipline, and you will be considered among the wise.